Hello, my name is Erica, and today I'm going to show you how to draw a massing with a grid on it in 3D and then unroll that massing and grid onto a pattern. So starting out, I like to use a base grid just to keep everything orderly and spaced evenly. So each of these rectangles is 24 feet by 60 feet. And to start out, I'm drawing a polyline along the 24-foot and the 60-foot. This we're going to use to divide the box into segments, into even segments. And I'm choosing to divide them into lengths of 4 feet because that is easily divisible into 24 and 60. And there are a few other options that are still easily divisible into 24 and 60, but I'm using 4 feet because it has a pretty high resolution but isn't too small. And we're just going to use the divide command, and then instead of choosing the number of segments, we're going to select the length, and our length is -4 feet. Yours is whatever you choose. And it spits out these nice points along here, and then we're going to use these points to draw the grid lines. And I'm drawing a line up and down and then copying it along each of these points. And if your O snap is not snapping to the points, you should go down here and make sure that points is selected. And then in the other direction, there are a lot of them. So I'm going to use the array linear command, and that will prompt me for the number of items I want later. So I'm going to figure out how many points there are along here. And Rhino says there are 16. So when we type array linear and it prompts us for the number of items, we will use 16. And then our first reference point and second reference point, and then this is our beautiful base grid. Next step, I'm going to draw the shape of my massing, and mine will just be a funky F shape. And yes. Okay, now that the funky F is drawn, we will go in and draw in the major grid, which this grid occurs at each of these kind of transition points in your massing shape. So mine has 6 of them. Great. Let's switch to perspective view and go in and make sure that everything's overlapping where it should be. And it looks great. So now we can extrude both the major grid and the letter-shaped massing, and you want to make sure that it's a solid shape, and we're going to extrude it 28 feet. And then let's change the extrusion to the letter-shaped massing layer, and our next move is to find the intersections between the major grid lines and the massing. So to do that, we just select everything and type intersect. Now that it has given us the intersections, we want to go in and delete these excess planes because we do not need them anymore. Now that all of the planes are gone, we're left with these nice lines around the perimeters, and we want to check if there are any intersection lines happening inside, and my shape has 2. So after we've gotten rid of those, it's time to draw in the minor grid, which will happen at each of the grid lines that we drew from the base grid. And to do that, I'm using a vertical line, so I type line and then lock it to the vertical direction, and making sure that I'm at that intersection here, we can drag it up, and then I'm going to just copy this line to each of the different points that don't already have the major grid line or a corner of your massing. Great, now that all of the vertical lines are done, let's go in and draw the horizontal lines. So to start out, I like to copy the perimeter curve of your massing over to the minor grid layer, and then we'll lock that one again. And using the same technique as before, we want to divide this 28-foot massing into 7-foot segments, and I'm going to use the divide tool and then divide it into 4 different segments, and it'll give us those lovely points, and then we can use that to copy, and locking in the vertical direction, copy this perimeter curve to each of the points. Once that is complete, it's time to draw the minor grid along the top and bottom of the massing. And so I'm doing that by just making sure that each time it says end when I am drawing these lines so that they're straight, just connecting the vertical lines we drew earlier. And now we'll go in the other direction, doing the same thing, waiting for it to say end. Wow, it looks like I missed a face. That's exciting. So just let's go in and copy that over so things can snap. Okay, back to the horizontal. That's what I like to see. I like to see it say end when I'm drawing these lines. Okay, so let's hide the base grid because we don't need it anymore. And now that we have our minor grid on top, we need to transfer it to the bottom. And to do that, I'm selectively selecting it at the top by dragging from left to right instead of right to left. And then I'm deselecting the perimeter because the bottom already has it. And I'm going to use the copy tool, locking it in the vertical direction and moving it down there. So we have our grid on all sides and it's looking fantastic. So our next step will be to trim these major grid lines here that are outside of the shape itself. So just trimming these away. And I'm getting rid of the points because I don't like to look at them. Now that everything is trimmed nicely and snapped to, and our minor grid is drawn, let's unroll the shape. To do that, we will just type unroll, surface, and we do not want to explode it, and we do want to keep the properties. That one's a big one. So now that we've selected our poly surface, we want to select the curves on the poly surface to unroll with it, and that's just all of them that we've drawn. Let's go check it out. Great. So now that we have this here, we can go into the Properties tab and turn off the ISO curves so that you can see it clearly. Another way to kind of get rid of the look of it being a surface, like so, is to lock both of these, the major and minor grid, and then we're going to duplicate the edges. So you can type dupe edge and then select all of them and get rid of it and put those lines on the outside like that. And then if you delete the poly surface, you have the shape ready to go. So now that we have our unrolled surface and curves looking nice, it's time to line weight them and print them. So I chose 3 different line weights for the 3 different types of lines: letter, border, boundary thing, and major and minor grid lines. So I'll just show you what mine turned out as. There you can see it and the logic to it, and then we'll just print it from here. There it is. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have fun with this.